since this is a project that I guess the Housing Commission will be working to undertake, I would like to take a moment, and kind of, ask a couple of questions about how best we should proceed. First of all, is this a project that you anticipate taking on with the help of the commission? Or is it a project that the commission would take on with your help? How would this whole thing work, basically?
I don't know exactly. We need the fair housing program developed. We need a plan in place, to replace a really skimpy one that we had from the 80s. And it needs to meet the community development block grant programs requirements. I need the commission to help us figure out the best approach for that. Like if a resident has a complaint or a housing issue, fair housing issue that they need to bring to the city, we need to figure out who that comes to, and from there where it goes to be resolved. Where normally our complaints come into the city clerk's office, and then they're dispatched to whoever is in charge of handling the complaint. We're thinking that this commission might be the mechanism to handle the fair housing issues. Because you're the housing commission, and whoever it is needs to have ongoing training in fair housing and understand the fair housing issues program, what our plan is. So the mechanics of actually developing it, I don't know. I think we need to have a discussion. Right now I'm staff of one. That's going to change shortly, so I'll have more help. So we could help with writing the plan, or with your assistance. I was hoping it could be maybe a subcommittee could be helping us get the plan in place and figure it out.
Judy, right now you're designated as the fair housing officer for the city, right?
I am right now because we had to designate someone, and there really wasn't any other anything else in place. But if I had a fair housing complaint today, we don't really have a mechanism in place to address them. So we kind of need to figure that out. Like what do we do if we have a fair housing complaint, and what is in our plan? Yeah.
Are you designated as the fair housing officer? You're the community development director, right?
Right.
Is that like in the charter or something?
So
No, it was a resolution that was done as part of what we had to do to meet the CDBG requirements. We have to have a fair housing plan. We've advised them for the past couple of years that we're in the process of developing that. We had to have a fair housing officer, and that was deemed to be the community development director. But now we really need to figure this out and get a plan in place and the steps in place.
So would the best course of action be to form like a subcommittee to work with city staff
yeah,
to put a draft together?
yeah, I think so. I think that what I would be looking for, I guess, I think that maybe would be good because you can start. Is there a timeline that you want to have this project done by, or is that this HUD wants us to have this done by?
Let's see. Right now I don't have a current CDBG. Well, I take that back. I have one CDBG program, the micro enterprise program from 2018, which will be in the process of being closed out soon. I'll need to be answering these fair housing questions for them through our monitoring. And then we have an application for a new micro enterprise program. And that would be, if we get that, it's going to be anytime soon, and it'll be for 2 years. So I really need to have this in place by the time that one is closed out within the next couple of years. But I'd like to have it in place much sooner than that, so that if we do have complaints or issues or problems, we're ready to handle them.
So do you have to have the plan as to how you handle complaints in place? And is that part of the fair housing plan?
Yeah.
That's all required by HUD.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's that affirmatively furthering fair housing, there needs to be a plan for that too.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that, so we need, that plan needs, the plan that we create needs to kind of be more like Ithaca's plan, in that it looks at multiple angles of housing discrimination and then comes up with barriers, which we already kind of are doing through the review of the spreadsheet, and then also has a more detailed methodology on how the complaints are handled, resolved, et cetera. I think it'd be good to get a subcommittee together. And I think it would be, what I'd like to have further discussion on is like the time commitment, people, how that would work, since I think a lot majority of the commissioner, a lot of the commissioners full-time jobs. So how would the meetings go? And then obviously you're in, normal business hours, so our hours kind of don't overlap. So I think it'd be, when we do that, I think it'd be good to get a plan on a division of work and get a kind of outline, broad outline of who's doing what, put together. So I guess I would entertain maybe to have, see if there'd be any people interested in serving on the subcommittee. I know Commissioner Fox isn't here, there's a couple commissioners not here. And that kind of lends, says, oh, we could appoint them by their absence, but I think I will also look forward to anyone else would want to
I'll do it.
serve. Okay, thank you, Commissioner Beckenstein. Is there anybody else who'd be interested in serving on a subcommittee? You have one or two.
I guess, what are the tasks? I mean, I looked at the plans that Commissioner Frankenstein sent, let's see, which county was it?
Shenango.
Shenango. That one was pretty straightforward. It was 5 pages long, I think, wasn't it? So,
Yeah, the city of Ithaca had the help of the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission that identified the barriers to fair housing for the protected classes under the Fair Housing Act. And I don't know that the city of Oneonta has that same entity that could do that research and that survey of the city residents.
I thought the city has a human rights commission, don't they?
Yeah.
So that could be interesting collaboration with them too. I think there's a lot of avenues to do community-wide surveys. The Syracuse Maxwell School is a community link program, which my now former employer is utilizing to do a comprehensive plan survey for 3 municipalities, one town and 2 villages that are connected within one another. And that we've had a good experience with them, and they helped design the survey and implement it. So that's an option.
Did they charge for that?
No,
I'm under the impression that we need to do this pretty quickly, so that you can have it in your applications.
Well, it doesn't need to be in the applications. It needs to be ready to go, or in place when we close out the next grant. I think for this micro enterprise grant, the current one, that's gonna be closed out within the next couple of months, and I don't think this can get done that fast. But the new one that we hope to get will have a 2-year period. I just hope it doesn't take 2 years.
I don't think that it would.
No, I'm thinking
But-
6 or 8
Well,
months, maybe.
We could fashion ours simply after, all of the Shenango County version. And still work on putting more meat to it afterward. Because you're gonna have program auditors come in and ask you, where's your plan?
Yes.
And if we can get just the skeleton of how this could work, that, again, we could work
That
after the fact to
Yeah.
put more meat on it.
That makes sense, I think. I feel comfortable with that as long as we approach, continue to add on and do like amendments over time and build it out. I think in order to satisfy the grant requirement, we don't need totally complex stuff in there, so I think I'm okay with that. So we have Commissioner Frankenstein on the subcommittee. Is there anyone else willing to join? I could if we meet in the evening.
I'd really like to see Joan on it because she's got the realty input, the input from the realty world and stuff, and the kind of on the ground with some of the stuff going on with housing things. But
Okay.
I don't wanna nominate her, because she's not here, I don't wanna,
We
you know.
can, we can nominate her and decide to that and see if she accepts, just let her know. And if she declines, then we'll revisit. Did you?
Well, I could help if necessary. I mean, I think we're kind of making it a little harder than we need to, honestly. I was just looking at Otsego County's fair housing plan, and it's 15 pages, and half of it is kind of legalese, honestly. I mean,
Yeah, their plan isn't really a plan. I looked at that one too, and I didn't include it because it doesn't say how they're doing anything or who's responsible for anything.
So I think we could have like, you know, as long as we have a clear, outline a clear path to resolving fair housing complaints and have a clear statement of like policies with regard to fair housing, we don't have to have like a survey or any in-depth analysis or anything like that. As long as we have those two pieces, that's something that a subcommittee and in a couple of meetings could put
I
together.
think so too.
So I guess, you know, I guess we'll appoint, I guess entertain a motion to have Commissioner Bennett and Commissioner Fox on the subcommittee to work with Judy. To update the fair housing plan and report back to us when the meetings occur, and then if necessary, Vice Chair, she can help out as well.
Is
And
it,
I'll help out too.
is it fair to include the city administrator
Yeah,
too? Only because of staff capacity. You know, if we're gonna start saying so-and-so in this position needs to be responsible for this, this, and this, someone's gonna have to say, yes, that's okay, or no.
Well,
it's not.
stop, first of all, I think before you even try to set up the subcommittee stuff, I think you need to reach out to our city attorney.
Yeah.
First. And find out what's the best way to go about the Fair Housing Act. That's gotta be the first thing. What legal things have to be in there, the city attorney needs to be involved in it. The second thing on is, before you start going with a subcommittee, is I think you guys need more information from what exactly is being done, because no matter what comes forward, it's gonna have to come up to the council. So that's the second thing. And I think you're, like he said, we already got Seagulls, we got other ones that are already there. I think you're better off, if you're gonna do it as the committee that's here. Don't be breaking it up, because then you're making twice the amount of work for yourself, because you're gonna go off and you're gonna come back, you're gonna report it, but this one said they'll come in and help if it needs to be. This one's gonna come in and help if it needs to be. Then I think we're gonna lose a lot more information and into the whole thing. I think if you're gonna do it, set aside at the meeting how you're gonna work on this, if this is really, I'm not 100% sure that this is the right committee for it. I'm willing to,
This is the task, it's in the.
is it, okay,
Yes.
so that's
it's under
fine.
The task that they have.
That's,
to
so
do.
it's in the task as a committee, as this committee.
Mhm.
So I don't think you should be breaking up the committee into a subcommittee to handle what's in for this whole committee. I think this needs to be a committee as a
Well, then
whole.
we'll have commission meetings as working meetings and not discussions.
yeah, so
I think you're making twice the amount of work for yourself, that's
So
all.
I guess-
Why don't we have, Dave Mersey, the city attorney, come to our next meeting, if we can get him to come here, and explain to us what the enforcement procedure could be or would be. There may be only one.
I don't think there is any enforcement on the city's part. You would refer any complaint that followed it checked every box. You would refer it to HUD or the
the
state
state.
Human Rights Commission.
It goes to the Shenango one says it, and both, because the Shenango said it goes to state and federal for. I think we would hear and try to understand what the issue is, and then write, send along, the complaint to, kind of all the information we gathered associated with it up to the states.
Right,
So I think I think that it would be, we could have, open to have working meetings to work on the fair housing plan. But I think, if we were to do that, and then, so I guess my request would be is that if Judy be willing to provide like a structure, working with Dave to give us a structure, maybe you two both come and give us a structure of what we're supposed to be including. That'd be good, that'd be better too. That's been, that's preferable, because I think like, to me, that's where the commission wants to go, that'd be fine. The only thing I had about the subcommittee was that having a subcommittee would allow for more nimble meetings and more work to be done.
Right.
And then it would free us up more time to take on the myriad other tasks related to housing.
Right.
So it would, it'd be understood that the city administrator and city attorney, community development would be working on creating, and the council necessarily would be working on aligning all the tasks, and we would be providing, the subcommittee would be acting on behalf of the commission. It's kind of like a comprehensive plan, like comprehensive plan had their own subcommittee working on it, of which the planning commission has liaison. So that's how that's kind of my thought, because we also, in the spreadsheet, I wanted to bring forward the recommendation regarding citywide rezoning, and that's another thing that would take up a lot of time if we were to have working meetings, but, and I also think that, the fair housing plan, it can be simple, but it's easy to get lost in kind of who does what, so that the subcommittee can figure out, get that structure for us and help us get organized too.
I agree.
Yeah, well, I guess if the idea to develop this plan is is for grant purposes, is what I'm hearing.
Well, it's a grant requirement, but it's the right thing to do for the
Well,
residents of the city.
I agree, if the idea, from what I hear, is that we need to develop this to apply for the grants, we don't need to complicate it any more than it has to be, right? So I'm seeing simple plans from Otsego County, which, Oneonta is in Otsego County. I'm seeing a simple plan that Commissioner Frankenstein said previously. All the minutia, that's why we're here as a housing commission, right? We're tasked with developing plans. We're tasked with coming up with creative ideas that solve housing issues. I don't think we need to break off and develop a complicated fair housing plan separate from what we're dealing with as a commission in this room.
I think the breaking off of the subcommittee was intended to do that simple plan, basically. I think that's how I understood it.
Mhm.
And that way we can knock it out, as little time as it takes, and then over time we can add on to it as we kind of see fit. And I think getting that simple plan put together, basically what we would be doing is delegating to commissioners to help understand the process better and start working on it. And then obviously the conditions of consulting with the city attorney and city administrator to make sure that everything's been done legally, take place before anything got started.
Great.
So I didn't want to imply that I was advocating for really deep analysis, but I think that the deep analysis will come later. So
Agreed.
are we agreed? So I think we have to open the floor for a motion. So should I amend the motion to include the development of the fair housing plan won't take place until consultation with the city attorney and city administrator, just pending consultation. Is that?
One thing that we haven't talked about with regard to this is that we do have a human rights commission. And have they had any contact with you as the fair housing officer in the past couple of years?
No.
Do you know any of those people? Maybe we should get some input from them right off, so that when we're done with this plan, they don't say, this is terrible. This isn't gonna help anybody. Or something like that.
I think that, there's a couple of options. I mean, we can do, if we had our members of the subcommittee, they can reach out to the Human Rights Commission, or Judy could reach out to them offline to see if they'd like to appoint people. So I think for us, our purpose, what we can control is appointing members of our commission there. And then of course, the city council would have to, and the city council and then the attorney and city administrator would need to iron out the exact procedure on their end.
I guess we should just whatever we come up with, we should just send it to them. and say,
Yeah, of course.
"Send this Before we send it to.
I think in order to adopt it, you would need to, if you're gonna, have a public hearing, it has to solicit public comment, as with any other plan, right? So that would need to go, that'd be a council vote, start off with the house plan, as it is, and would require a public hearing. So there'll be, that avenue, and I think isn't every commission meeting essentially a public hearing anyway? So a lot of our meetings are public hearings, so we can also use this commission to regularly gather public input too.
Well, they're public meetings, but they're not public hearings.
They just don't have a legal notice, but they're notified, the public's notified in advance of every meeting. They have access to all the materials for every meeting and the opportunity for public comments there.
Yeah, and then they can also, I think now the governor has a new law, I think that requires meeting materials to be up a certain number of days ahead of time for the public to review,
At least 24 hours.
at least 24 hours. So that's helpful in terms of from an equity perspective. And so I think we have consensus on how to proceed. So motion's kind of complicated, but I guess the motion would be to appoint Commissioner Benkenstein and Commissioner Fox to assist the Community Development Department with the creation of a fair housing plan, pending consultation with the city administrator and city attorney. And Judy, maybe you could do that.
Yep.
Okay. No second, I guess a motion in a second. I guess. We need,
Get it, you'll get it.
yeah, I guess not, I guess it's that. Is there another way on how to proceed?
Everybody clear that you're asking for a motion
Yeah.
to move that forward.
Yeah, I'm asking for a motion to move that forward. I guess I did. Motion fails.
I can make the motion, but if we're not gonna,
Can we share a second?
You can motion or second.
Yes, so
absolutely.
I'll make the motion.
I can second. I would like to stipulate though that we come up with a plan quickly and a simple plan. That we don't get too lost in the weeds.
Yeah, I'm confused by a subcommittee because we have 4 people here right now. I mean, we,
Ed's probably not gonna show up much because he's in Florida and I don't know what his plans are, but he talks a lot about leaving town altogether. And Russ Suther's not on this.
We have a vacancy. So my thought with the subcommittee is that if they put together, they could, if it's a simple plan, you could put it, and you got the appropriate approvals, you could put it together in like a week or 2 weeks. And then they would be able to do that, send us the draft ahead of the meeting, and then the next meeting we come back and move on it. But if it's us here, we meet once a month and we'd be sending emails back and forth, so it would take longer, ostensibly take longer. That's kind of my thought.
As far as designating a person, well, did we do that? Did we take care of that?
Yeah.
We want us to also work on designating a person, which, that's a pretty tricky issue.
yeah, I don't know that we have the authority. to
I don't
do
think
that.
we have the authority to designate a fair housing officer or a procedure. We can recommend a procedure to resolve complaints, but the council would have, and then the city attorney would have to verify that it complies with all appropriate state and federal regulations.
That's what I'm looking for. I didn't want it to just be me thinking it through and making that decision or recommendation to council. That's why I wanted all these minds that are working on housing issues to be thinking about it. We don't have to do it right away, but that will be part of what this plan is gonna be. Of how do we want those steps to happen, and who will compile the documentation that takes it, that goes to the next level outside of the city. And those are things we need to think about as the actual written plan is being developed. Having a small subcommittee that's working on that written plan I think is very helpful to keep it moving faster. But nothing would be done without the full committees deciding and agreeing to what's in the draft as it's developed.
So
I think we're all opposed to futile efforts. And I think that if we don't have a fair housing officer who's devoted to it as a cause, somebody who believes in it, it doesn't matter what kind of plan we have. And if we do have someone who's devoted to the cause, then once we have something written and approved, and then somebody gets appointed, that person's gonna come back to us or to the common council and say, look, this doesn't really serve my purposes. I can't enforce anything. I can't do anything. I can't get anything done with these complaints that I'm getting. So I don't think it's all that important what we do right now, other than that we pass muster for the grant applications. That minimum amount of labor that we do here.
Yeah.
for it.
I think. All right.
No, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think that I think there's consensus, if I'm reading the room correctly, that we want a simple document. That we want it to be done quickly, and that over time, it'll be fleshed out to a collaborative effort within city government. I think that's well understood, and I understand, Commissioner Fox and both Commissioner Bennington, I have full faith that they'll be able to try to execute that prerogative. So I think if there's no other discussion, I guess I'll call the question. So to move this forward.
Chair Lappin,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sheehan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bennington.
Yes.
Commissioner Friedman.
Yes.
So I think that between, and we have the holidays coming, so I guess if we could get a meeting prior to that holiday recess, that would be good, so I can keep the progress going for some of this stuff once the year comes. So if we could get that scheduled. Great. So the next item on the agenda is the housing plan spreadsheet. I have to apologize. I was in the middle of a job change and I didn't schedule a subsequent meeting to go over the spreadsheet. But what I wanted to discuss would be, we can reschedule it to continue going over it outside of the meeting, which we've been doing. And those who can make it can make it. Or, the other side is that, we can kind of continue to go through the remaining items in these meetings. And the third thing that I kind of wanted to bring up was there are a lot of notes from city staff as to where the recommendations are being met, or where they are with regard to being completed or not, or if there's an issue. I think I wanted to see if this commission wants would be comfortable sharing the spreadsheet with other city staff, like the city council, for instance, so that they can see kind of that document. And open up that floor for discussion, because I think there's some, concern amongst the city council members around housing in general. And they probably appreciate seeing where the various recommendations are and seeing the notes from city staff, particularly those outlining the inherent contradictions in the document that we're wrestling with right now. Is that something that we'd be okay with forwarding it to the city council?
Sure.
That'd be great. And so I think in terms of scheduling a meeting, I can schedule another meeting with city staff to continue going over it. Being that I'm, starting a state position, I may or may not be able to attend, but if I'm not able to attend, I encourage those able to attend to continue doing it, to be there and continue going through the spreadsheet and report back to us, kind of similar to what we did before. So I will send that email tonight, try to get some dates scheduled. And then, by all means, like I said, you can proceed without me. So I can do that. I apologize. It's just been a crazy time. Yeah. It's my fault. So in terms of new business, I did want to bring one item for consideration. You know, this commission has the ability to offer recommendations to the city council about advancing housing policies. The city is in the process of developing a form-based zoning code for the downtown district. Form-based code is a different type of zoning that focuses less on use and more on site design and layout. Form-based codes have been shown across the country to allow for a wider range of housing to be incorporated into a city with a much more expeditious permit review process. It's not as arbitrary as a Euclidean traditional zoning code, called it's also known as a Euclidean zoning code. The city has the capacity, in my opinion, to develop a form-based code. They did one for the downtown in-house, and they did it at next to no, there's no consulting costs incurred or anything like that. A form-based code is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It's consistent with a lot of the recommendations in our housing plans and studies. And going into a new legislative session in January, and with the upcoming grant cycle and the potential additional funding to the infrastructure bill and other grant sources, I think it'd be a prime time to recommend the city undertake this as a priority item heading into January. And so that's kind of my spiel. And if there's more supporting documentation, I can provide, when necessary, I can provide that as well.
You looking at the council to make this a priority?
A recommendation from us to them to make it a priority.
So I'll make sure I read it.
Yeah. It's, it'd be building off the momentum that Stephen Yearly did through the creation of the MU1 code, and that the city has taken so much care to do through their DRI initiative. And the DRI has been instrumental in adding additional affordable housing to the downtown. And so I think the intent of the DRI was to catalyze a new direction for city planning in general. And this would be building off of that. And I think like you could even get some technical assistance through the LWRP duty, I think. Right? For that planning process.
Yeah, it's possible, WRP is gonna take a year or two.
You and I might be talking about that. So what do you think in terms of the recommendations? If we were to recommend this, how would, I guess I'd be looking for guidance on how would we recommend, like in writing, verbally, vote, etc. Like what kind of supporting documentation do you think we would need, or is this fine?
Is that to me or?
Just in general.
Oh. I would say if you're gonna recommend something like that, I would put it in writing with your guys' signature as a committee as a whole. That this is, you guys have discussed this is a recommendation you're making to the council to make a priority. Because you feel that will help the housing market and make the city more viable, or however you want to phrase it, but I think it'd probably be better in writing as a whole. Or the second thing you could do is ask to have a little bit of time with the council to meet and do a quick presentation on what you want to do. I mean, that's the second thing. I mean, sometimes question and answering are a little bit easier for council members, and so they can ask questions on what they're trying to exactly look at by doing it. Because I can tell you right now, I think there's gonna be a couple of people when you talk about this type of code, it's gonna go, I don't understand it. So they're gonna ask, what, how is that gonna help? So.
Even after reviewing the MU1 code.
I just think there'd be a couple that,
Sure.
Because codes is a hard thing to really understand.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're really into it and stuff, like, it's your job and you, and meet with the zoning board, do with the planning board, and Joel, or Jared's been around, I keep calling him brother, I'm sorry. Jared's been, around enough, but, if you don't do it all the time, codes is a hard thing to understand, it's a hard thing to try to put the two together, understand how a code might restrict versus not restrict, and when we're talking about like residential areas. Like, Peter had a couple of good points, when we talked about it earlier, how is this code gonna help when you got this kind of apartment already on this street with, this can have 11, this can have 3, this can have, on a street that might have 6 different, in that residential, 6 different houses on it already. Because over the years, I don't think people really understand the city. When it first started out, it was this way, and as it grew, they redid the code, then they redid the code, then they redid the code, and they redid the code.
Yeah, I think so, like I think that it'd be good to, I'd be happy to put something in writing and or do a presentation, but I think in order to, the first step would be to run any of those recommendations or annual presentations, or if they agree to do one by the committee, to my colleagues in the commission too, which, this is what we're doing right now.
Have we as a committee received that NU1 proposal?
I don't believe, it should be publicly available because it's been discussed by council.
The point I want to make is that until I have a chance to look at it and kind of analyze how it's going to work, I can't really get behind it. I would like to get behind it because it sounds like a good idea, but I want to see what the words are in writing.
Of course, yeah, so I think we can make sure that we get, I have a full copy of the code, I can send that to everybody for review.
I think it would be helpful to have Stephen maybe give us a quick presentation on NU1 and then how the form-based code, how that looks
That sounds,
in other areas.
that sounds great, I like that, I'm in complete agreement with that. I think that'd be good. And then he can also send us a code. So we'll get that to Stephen, so we'll have Stephen send us a code and maybe he'll do a presentation to us in January, so decide 20-30 minutes, 20 minutes for him to do that. And then we'll debate that, so we'll just hold that over to the next meeting. When Stephen will do the presentation, ahead of that, we'll be sure to get you a copy, the whole commission a copy of the code and go from there.
So I'd like to go on to some other things.
Sure.
Really?
Yeah.
So, we saw a map of the vacant land that the city owned. It didn't have all the vacant land that the city owned. And it didn't have vacant land that was privately owned, or that was owned by colleges, or that was owned by privately owned. And I think we need a map like that to start to recognize where we have potential for housing. So can we get that from anybody in the city? Is there such a map? Can the county just print out a map that shows the vacant land, the tax office?
I think we had that one that the city had presented last month.
Right, I thought it missed a lot of land.
As far as I know, those, all of the land, when Greg handed it to us and finance, he said this is all the land that we own with.
But we never got a copy of it.
Oh, you guys never got a copy of it?
It was passed around. Can we get it?
Yeah, I think so. We could probably if we could get a copy of that map, I think that's another Stephen.
So I know it was city land, and I know that there was some city land that wasn't on it, but it didn't have any of the other vacant land. And it didn't have, I don't think it had city parkland. That's vacant land, some vacant land. Yeah. For designated park. So that's one thing that, I'd like to get that map so we can start working on what we would have to do to those parcels of land to make them developable.
Sure.
Whether it's changing the zones or requiring that they start being taken care of.
Some are landlocked two parcels, but I think it'd be good to get in and start looking at that. Kind of building off your statement, there's the Market Street redevelopment project that's part of the city's DRI. And there are some vacant and underutilized structures that might, have some housing potential or may not. But there's a whole Market Street redevelopment with regard to the Vidiola and other aspects, getting that kind of conceptual design. So that could be another area to look at too. That's another planning process that's happening, as is the LWRP plan as well, which is again is a redevelopment plan around our waterfront, kind of the mill race side off going towards the east end. And so that could be another planning that's another planning process where we can look at how adding more how,
We don't
understanding.
have a waterfront. What are you referring to?
The local waterfront revitalization plan, we have a grant from Department of State.
What was that for that trail?
Well, it's a combined planning process that we're gonna be doing with the town of Oneonta to make better connections to our waterfront. Even though we're cut off from it because of I-88.
Okay, but we're talking recreation, right?
We're talking a lot of things. It could be recreation, it could be economic development. It's gonna be resiliency, checking to see what the climate impacts will be on flooding and growth. That's especially gonna impact the town. It's a whole number of things.
There could be a housing, there's a lot of those big vacant structures in the east end, kind of near the tennis center, that area by Neola. I forgot what it's like. It's this old, maybe the ironworks, it's this old factory. But there's adaptive reuse potential on that kind of lower side towards the waterfront or towards Neola and 88 on our side. That's kind of where I was thinking. That's one potential planning process. Has to do with underutilized and or vacant land. The Market Street redevelopment's another one. So that's I just wanted to bring that up as those are like, ongoing planning processes that would help us look at, parcels as well as for housing component. I think it'd be good to have housing commissioner involvement in that. So that way we're check the price of what's going on. And so that way we're not kind of duplicating effort. Does that make sense? Sense.
Another issue. I've heard from someone who's on the board of the hospital about the need to make temporary housing for temporary hospital workers more readily available. Because it's apparently very hard to get people to come here and work because there's not housing available for them. And I think we should, as soon as we can, if this remains a problem, and I think it's likely to from the prediction they're seeing on COVID.
Yeah, we just had 77 cases.
If this is going to remain a problem, I think we may need some kind of an emergency declaration about zoning that will allow people to house short-term hospital workers.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion.
But I think it's something we need to act on as if it was an emergency.
Sure, so that, I think this was just full disclosure, this issue was discussed during the zoning board of appeals meeting. I think last week, was it last week already, 2 weeks ago? And that in that meeting, Stephen Yearley said that he had draft legislation that would kind of help achieve, I guess, that outcome, correct?
That was not in public part of the meeting. I didn't hear that. Well, I don't hear things sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, he was discussing, we were discussing that, yeah, so I think my understanding, we can follow up with him just to be sure. But that's just my, is that draft legislation already exists. So what we could do, in treating this like an emergency, we could recommend, again, maybe set aside time, since at the an upcoming council meeting to advocate that the legislative committee take this on. So, this would be I think this is, it's well received, my opinion, at least one commissioner. It's a well received recommendation, I think that we should do that, and I'd be willing to kind of bring that, help bring that forward. But then that would be a legislative change that the council would need to consider, so. And I'd be willing to open the floor for additional discussion on it. What do people think?
I like everything both of you just said.
So let's move ahead with that
Mhm.
as quickly as we can.
Okay, so the next council meeting,
December 7th.
this up next Tuesday at 7. So, what we can have, I'd be willing to attend, and if there's another commissioner, it may be Commissioner Freeman, if you would.
I would attend, but before I do that, I want to talk with someone from the hospital. And find out just how severe the problem is.
You're looking for emergency declaration, or are you looking to go through legislative? Legislative won't be quick.
Whatever, no, I think whatever can be done quickly, because I think we're talking about a significant health issue.
Depending on the time we get out of this meeting, I am more than happy to pick up the phone and call Gary Herzig and say, this is what we discussed, this is what's going on. He happens to talk to the people from Fox anyway, and if that is truly a thing, I'm sure he can get with the city attorney and see if there's something we can do to try to make it quicker. Because when you said legislative, I'm saying, well, that's not quick, because then you're laying things in front of us, which is what, 30 days or a week or something's got to be laid in front of us before we can even.
Yeah, no, I didn't know there was a emergency kind of procedure where we can do something.
I'm not sure, it's,
Yeah, I think. I don't know. if that-
I don't know how the mayor's emergency powers kind of go and,
It's not as- yeah.
there are certain things you can do by law. And that's why we have a city attorney, so.
Well, a lot of things you can do that might not be by law, but nobody's gonna challenge you anyway, so you just do them. Especially in an emergency.
Only legal if you get caught.
Yeah, so I think.
Say that on recording.
So I think what we could do is we could maybe reach out to the mayor and say, we're interested in looking at this and wondering how best to proceed. Maybe get have him reach out to him, just to let him know that we discussed this. And then if he wants to follow up further, he can, and then if he needs to consult the city attorney to figure out a proper procedure, we'll follow.
Yeah, there might not be anything you can do. Like I said, I'm not the mayor. I don't really want to worry about it. I just know that they have a little bit of certain power and we can.
Yeah, I think it's there could be, I know it has to do with short-term, but short-term rentals. And there are existing we have an existing zoning code that treats it a certain way.
But we also did it with the mask law. We did it real quick. We actually got the first one off, although it wasn't, not getting hung up on politics, but the first one we got off real quick. It wasn't, we saw the need, we did it, we voted. We had to redo it, but it was, if the council's all behind it at the beginning, I think the process could be quicker, but like I said, I don't know if there's anything that we can.
So
I don't even know if this would even apply at the same thing. I'm not
Maybe-
in
sure.
the process of getting this approved, we don't know what it is we want to get approved.
Right.
But you said that Steve was already working on it.
Yeah, so it was to, adjust the short-term rental law. It had to do with owner occupancy. But it would be, there's a couple of issues that I could see. It's why I wanted to bring it to legislative, is that it's hard, we can't discriminate, say, you have to be this type of health worker. And we're only gonna give, allow you to do this, only healthcare workers can take advantage of this new flexible short-term rental law. But what we could do, the reason legislative could do is to amend the short-term rental law to make it more easier to, and not require variances in some cases. To allow flexibility for healthcare workers, to come in. There's the side effect of baseball families and tourists, another thing, the Verbo Airbnb type deal too. There's like a potential for a different reaction. So I think it could be an emergency. I just, I think that discussing it with the council and bringing it in front of legislative will allow us to avoid any potential housing discrimination issues.
Well, I think that the rental to short-term health workers is something that any rental property can do without any special permits, because it's not a short period of time. I think it's like 6 weeks, 3 months, somewhere around there. So I think anybody that has a rental property can do it. I think what we need to talk about as a commission is how can we get more available, because most rental properties are occupied if they're decent. How can we get more available? How can we get people who own and occupy their own single-family homes to make part of their home available or something? I mean, we can't build housing for something like this, but we need to have some method that facilitates this happening, and I don't know what that is.
So I mean, I think so. There's could be an option for like voluntary, public outreach campaign. The city undertakes help our healthcare workers find a place to live. That's, some sort of campaign to get those kind of short-term, housing agreements set up. But I think we need to make sure there's voluntary issues. There's like public outreach campaigns. But any of those issues, again, we have to make sure that we comply, investigate the legality and the kind of procedure properly. I think that saying it's an urgent matter, that we'd like the council to consider it and then, start advancing it as a high priority item. I think that's something we can do. But I want to avoid making a recommendation that another councilman could say, oh, you just said 3 things that are illegal or you can't do it.
Right.
So I think that if we had it be like, an urgent issue, and we would like to maybe work with the legislative committee to address it as fast as possible, or with the council to address it as fast as possible. That could be, that could set in motion, actual concrete thing that we could be working on going forward.
Could we, sorry, if I
Sorry.
input. Could we suggest that the hospital contact colleges? I think the enrollments are down on campus, I believe. This is a temporary thing that we're trying to address, not an emergency.
That's a good idea.
So maybe the colleges could provide that housing, because I really think that's kind of outside of our purview as a city to find housing for their employees on a temporary basis, but that could be, we have 2 colleges up there.
Maybe it's like, maybe we could be like a facilitator, facilitator and arrange a meeting.
We have our town gown.
Oh, that's a good
that
idea.
Mark
So,
is leading, and maybe ask them to take it on
okay, that sounds good.
There
possible.
are hotels also. I mean, if it extended in the summer, that might be tough, but
Now it's a dead season, so they'd be getting more. I think that's a great suggestion. So I like that, Gary, if we could maybe somehow, the town and gown committee could arrange some sort of temporary housing arrangement with them. See if we can get hospital workers to be able to stay on campus. I think that'd be a great suggestion, and then maybe loop into the Vice Chair Shoes and just to loop into the hotels and see if like the Clarion or other hotels that maybe have low occupancy right now be interested in participating.
So you're just suggesting we be a facilitator in
Right.
getting those
In the same way,
various entities together?
Yeah, just say we can make that recommendation and to the the council to facilitate that to the town. It's a different committee, so you could reach out to the council and say, can you, get the town and gown committee to work on this.
yeah, I think their role is just to be the facilitator, to bring the parties to
Yeah,
the
so
table.
we've identified this as an issue. The commission, working with, Judy Hangman, we arrived at kind of this suggestion, we'd like the council, see if the council would be willing to facilitate this through the town and gown task force. That could be like an easy recommendation that it's an idea and that I don't think we need to do it something super detailed in writing, but be something that we do. I guess if we were gonna do that, advance it to the council, I guess if we could have a vote to, I guess maybe make a recommendation regarding temporary housing for hospital workers. And bring that recommendation to the city council in the December 7th meeting. Yes, just so we have it on the record that we discussed it. Let's see. Confused look.
I'm not sure what you're trying to ask the council to do. I'm thinking as a council member, when I'm talking about this, and somebody asked me a question, how, because I'm not, you just want the council to,
Well, because I guess the reason why I wanted to have this in writing is I'm not sure if we can say town and gown task force, you do this. Would you do this, or maybe we don't need a motion, maybe it's one of us goes to the next town and gown task force meeting and brings this up to them directly. Do we need, I guess what I'm asking is, do we need, from council's perspective, do we need to loop them in that way?
I think we're getting a little ahead. I mean, I understand where he's going with. Peter just said, I think we really need to know what the hospital needs,
How about if we,
you know?
how about
so
if
we
I get a
advocate
hold
for-
of Lisa Montante
Yeah,
on the board of the hospital and ask her if the magnitude of the problem is sufficient, could she arrange for somebody from the administration of the hospital to come to the county?
Okay. That sounds good. So
I would do that.
I'll withdraw. Okay, so then Commissioner Friedman, you will reach out to Lisa Montante and get back to us. Yeah, proceed.
So I got another problem for you.
Okay.
One more, it's my other problem.
There are others of us who want to speak too.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, you finished.
Okay, well, we have 3 elementary schools in the city, and they're all in pretty much single family neighborhoods. And we don't have land near them that's developable for multifamily housing. We need affordable housing where children can live. And it would be much better if those children could live near the schools rather than all have to be bused to school. So I think we should look into those 3 neighborhoods. Well, 4, the high school as well. And see specifically where we can make land available for sale that may not be for sale now, that could be developable for multifamily housing.
The city, I mean, city on.
Not necessarily city-owned.
Or like, just in general, parcels. Okay, so. Basically, like, look at the kind of landscape and see what could be built there. Like a thought exercise. Makes sense, yeah. Do that. What do you think?
Well, I think it goes along with the whole idea of if we want to get housing built, we need to have more land available to build it on. Because then the more land that's available to build it on, the lower the price of the land.
So,
And that's my simplistic supply and demand view, but
we have, a lot of that area is built out too. And so I'd be interested in looking at it, kind of just seeing a map, and seeing kind of the overarching zoning code governing that area. It'd be interesting because sometimes in areas that are built out, rezoning, potential solution as well. I think Commissioner Bennet's seen it, been waiting.
Do we know what we're doing with that?
Yeah, I think we're just gonna be looking at, we pull together some maps with the schools and we'll look at from the thought exercise.
Mine's very simple. I was contacted by a staff person from the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank yesterday. They were just awarded a grant to inform the residents, the homeowners, within their service area, which includes Otsego County, of the existence of new state funds to help people, homeowners, avoid foreclosure. As part of their grant, they need to conduct public forums. And they only have, the window of the funding closes January 31st. So I put forward to you the idea of better advertising or publicizing our next commission meeting to try to drum up more public attendance, interest, and have her come and do her 5-minute, 10-minute presentation on what this program is and how eligible homeowners might be able to access it.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and is that Alyssa
Yes,
Pond Raider?
yep,
I know her too, so, I think that'd be great. I mean, if we have that we have that presentation, and I think the presentation of the ME1 code, I think it'd be good to have lots of people there, so they could be, since some synergy there. I think it'd be good to maybe, through the city's social media channels to really push those two presentations, and maybe, we could have Alyssa send like a bio and what, she wants
Okay.
a presentation, we could
Yeah.
push it, and then if there's other partner organizations, like, I'm thinking OFO, obviously, but other folks interested in promoting that meeting, other organizations, or, if it's consistent with their mission, if they would be willing to share,
yeah,
I think that'd be something that would be great. Cause I know foreclosure is a sensitive issue in Otsego County. Anyone losing their home, it's a really important thing. And having this money available could save a lot of people a lot of pain. So I think that, any effort to publicize this program and get people interested in starting to apply would be great. Because if we can keep people in their home, particularly now, I think it'd be awesome.
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that we have in this, in like an hour and 5 minutes, we've got like 6 new agenda items for January. It's great. I think this is what we're supposed to do, right? So, yeah, I think that'd be good. And is it, what do people think? Is there any other discussion about it? Folks want to share?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it'd be good. I guess, Carrie, if they were to, the land bank were to get you like a bio and some information publicizing
Yep. Yep.
when they need it, but when would
As
you
soon
need
as
it?
they get it to me, I can start pushing it out.
So maybe, if you could reach out to Alyssa and let her know that
Yep,
we'd
I'll
like
call
it
her
as,
now.
meet as soon as possible, we can do that, and I think that also ties gives us an opportunity to tie them into the spreadsheet, because there's several recommendations involving the land bank. That I think, in our meeting with, only like a month ago, that we had lots of questions for the land bank, so probably give us a chance to, get our questions in, and talk with them a little bit more, and get us connected. And I think Alyssa, from my short experience working with her, she's very open and accessible. Easy to work with, as is their executive director, Total Moras.
Yep, I met him 2 weeks ago.
He's awesome. Another young, very talented young man.
So how can we market this to the people that need to see it, which are people that are behind on their mortgages, are behind on their utilities, water, sewer fees, everything else? Those are the people we want to see it, and I don't know how to reach out to those people.
Sure, so typically, the county reps, leading up to that kind of county auction procedure where the final payments would be due. Usually the county reps, traditionally the county reps go to each property to try to reach the property owner to see if there's anything they can do, the county can do to help. My thought is, if those reps do make that effort to reach to the landowners, which I think the only other ones, for the most part, do. I think I didn't do it as much as I should have. But I think that would be a good thing to get, to send the county reps to those people. You could have, maybe work with the county treasurer, Alan Ruffles, to send that information to those properties who are behind.
So should the county reps know about this funding?
Yeah, I mean, everyone.
So should they get an invitation to come to our
Yeah,
January meeting?
They should, yeah, and especially, I don't know how to get in touch with the per individual replacing me yet. I don't think he has contact information.
I think a roundabout way I can get to them.
Okay,
So,
yeah, but it would be good to have, the three other county reps are gonna remain the same. So it'd be good to invite them to the meeting. I think they'll attend. I can,
could he do a presentation for the whole county board too?
I mean, she could be asked that.
yeah,
I'm just,
So those are just the properties with back taxes, though. They're not the ones that are, bank foreclosures.
We could send out an
Yeah, so-
invitation to loan officers or those, you know, working with homeowners now, trying to do some loss mitigation stuff.
Yeah, and I don't know how to get to the other banks that are outside of this area.
Yeah.
So,
I
yeah,
think,
I just am not sure how to hit the right audience that we need to hit.
I think that if the meeting's recorded, and so I think what we could do is have the, PowerPoint go up on the city website, and then blast it out through maybe, I think like the regional, the IDA and then maybe Southern Tier 8 to reach out to the regional banks that way. And to say that, the Greater Mohawk Valley Land Bank's working on this program, and then publicize awareness about what you'd be willing to share. Maybe it's sending it to NBT or other, community bank, and seeing if they'd be willing to publicize the existence of this funding program. That could be it, because those are, a lot of the banks here are regional anyway. Because NBT is, is regional, and
Yeah,
I think I think the last local bank in this Otsego County, I read some sort of letter to the editor, the last local bank got bought up by a regional entity, so we have no, entirely locally owned bank anymore. I think, as I understand it.
I wonder if, the 3 or 4 electronic signs in town, any of them would be willing to put a message up
Yeah,
about this kind of thing up at the school, across from next time, or
yeah, well, we have, I think we have somebody with a few electronic signs around town.
So Audrey, the program, I haven't read the most current thing on it, but the last I knew, the program was going to be where homeowners can apply directly online
mhm.
and get reimbursed for back mortgage payments, utilities, water, sewer fees, those kinds of things. Is that still the same? Do you know?
I don't know that it's a reimbursement. I'm not sure exactly how it works, if the bank is paid directly.
Okay, but they can get paid for those items. And my understanding before was that they had to apply themselves.
That's
And like
how I
if,
understand it.
like the city could not help them
Correct.
because we could possibly be somebody that they owe money to.
Correct.
So, okay, so that's still the same, those rules are
That's how
still
I
the same.
understand
So we
it.
have to be careful in what we're doing. We can't physically help them apply, but we can give them information
Yeah, I
to be
think
able
what,
to apply.
I think what we would be doing through this would be letting a third-party entity like the land bank use our venue to present.
Right.
But then the city won't, we would, is it public part of open meetings law, we would have the video and the presentation and everything that would go up. So that maybe a partner entity could take those pieces and then run with it to reach out to everybody else. So that we avoid giving that perception. But I think that'd be great. I think, that'd be something we can move on. That'd be good to get going right away, I guess.
yeah, I gotta kind of going along with this. I know when I was on the county board, I kind of myself, almost tried to get a program going. Just kind of stopped. Maybe this is something where this committee can even maybe work with the county or work with our representatives for the county. Nobody wants to see anybody get kicked out of their house. And, when they get behind in trouble times and stuff. So we were talking like about a patch loan type thing or somewhere you could pay your taxes and stuff to the county so they wouldn't get foreclosed on. And so that they're making payments throughout on the back taxes so that they can stay in their house. I don't know if that's something, might be off the beaten path for what you guys do here, but I mean, like I said, nobody wants to see anybody get down in their house, so. maybe if some, like a commission like this kind of reached out to our 4 local representatives on the county, maybe they could push that through, try to bring that up to them again, saying, you know, this is a way we can help, because the county benefits too, because instead of having that go for closure, or possibly even just sit there for months and months and months, at least they know they're getting their money back, and, you know, they're gonna eventually recoup that money.
So I think that's a good idea. I think having the county reps come, get that information, and then see at that meeting, we can say that, you know, we can ask the county reps there, we can say, will you be willing to take this information and help your constituents in your district advance this forward?
Mhm.
And then maybe, you know, over as time progresses, we can make a periodic note to see, follow up with them, or remind them, and maybe, you know, I think that one of the items that we had discussed in an earlier meeting was the foreclosure process in general, so I think it could also be serve dual purpose to have the county treasurer come and talk to us about that process and see how we can, you know, help people stay in their homes, you know, for long enough, so I think it'd be good to advance that, so. I will, once we get that information, if you, I can send you the blurb, I can send you the contact information for the existing county reps, and Councilmember Harrington, if you could reach out to Mr. Scanlon, because I have no idea how to get in touch with them.
Yeah, I gotta go through it.
Yeah, if you can let him know that we're talking about this, it'd be helpful, because I don't know his number, and I don't know if he does email or anything. Okay, so is there any other new business the commissioners want to bring forward? I know that Councilmember Harrington requested a few minutes to address the commission. And so, the floor is yours.
Thanks. I'm a firm believer when we do commissions and stuff that us as political, my job when I come here is not, I try not to talk very often because it's your guys' commission, and I think it's important that you guys, you know, have the freedom to do what you need to do. I just kind of report back. The other day, a few weeks ago, there was a push to advocate for projects, and it's not a political thing, I don't want to get into it, but the commission, I talked to Danny about it, and I said, it wasn't fair to you guys to get put into a position where you're being asked to advocate for any projects. That's not really what this was designed for. It's to help push the city to sustainability, to make sure we have the right housing, take the information that's for there, not to advocate for a specific type of project. And I just wanted to apologize that got brought up. I know I had a couple of people from the committee call me and say, you know, that wasn't right, and I agree with that. So, and I know they get a little heated, and that was not what this commission is for, and I'm personally apologizing because I'm one of the ones that got heated when it got brought up. And so I'm gonna apologize to all of you that happened, because I feel that my job as a city rep, as a city councilman sitting here is really twofold, is really listen to what you guys are saying, making sure that some of our concerns get heard so we can go, because we're all on the same page of making the city go to be better. That's really our goal all the way around. So that's really all I have to say. So, you know, like in the next meeting, I probably won't be saying much again. I'll probably just be sitting back in my chair again. But it has been bugging me for a couple of days, weeks now. I just wanted to apologize for that because I didn't think that was very fair to you guys.
Well, I don't need an apology, because I don't remember what you're talking about.
I think that it was, I kind of echo Commissioner Freeman's point, there's no apology necessary. It had to do with the RSS project. And your point's well taken. I think that, in general, our role is to analyze housing policies and the barriers to advancing the city's various housing studies and implementing body, the facilitator. So I think, to that effect, I think our role is to help Judy and help Steve and all those others work within the city government working on housing to advance that. And I think it's also when there's legislative issues regarding housing policy that the legislative committee and the council members on it, or even members of the city council can feel free to contact us to provide testimony as well. I think it's a two-way street. It's not like the county, on one hand, we can analyze housing issues, provide recommendations, but sometimes input can come from the other side too. Like the council members say, we've been working on this issue, you have this idea, what do you guys think? So I think, reiterating that, communication is at its strongest when it comes from both directions. I think we have a good person to facilitate that in Councilmember Harrington. And I just encourage that, we have the liaison, you as liaison, but I know if there's other city council members who are passionate about housing and they wish to come and, address us, they're more than any member of the public's welcome to come. So I think that's also important, because sometimes, there are important meetings like the county budget public hearing that's held at night. And in my 4 years on the board, I think I've seen one person attend that evening meeting, but everybody has an opinion on the county budget. So if you have an opinion on housing, please come. That's it, is it? Andrew, do you have anything you want to bring up?
Yeah, the last meeting that I was at, it was discussed about having some sort of summit with the rental house or the people that own the apartment buildings. And I know Wilbur Park Apartments was mentioned. With me, I live at Wilbur Park Apartments, and I was wondering if the apartment manager, Andrea Chrysler, had reached out to this commission about attending or anything like that.
So I think, and I know you're referring to, I think we had discussed previously the fair housing plan. And, and incorporating, some sort of public outreach event into the development of that. I think where we're going right now is we want to get the bones of the plan that satisfies the grant criteria done first. And then as we build onto the plan, I think there's agreement that we would add more in-depth analysis that involves public outreach.
Well, as part of the plan, there has to be an affirmatively furthering fair housing effort. And that can include public forums to educate the community about fair housing
Great.
rights and responsibilities.
Excellent. And I think I think that if we work that throughout the subcommittee, that you and Commissioner Fox could be able to push that through as part of that requirement. I think that's great. So sure. Thank you. So the answer is we're working on it.
Okay, that's fine.
What is your name?
Andrew Hamill.
You were at the last meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and we do have a vacancy. So if there are names and people you would want to bring up for consideration by the council.
I heard through the grapevine that a name was recommended to fill former Commissioner Southard's seat.
I had, reached out to one person, but I didn't bring forward any recommendation yet. And her name is Jenny Kane. I don't know, her last name is Koehn. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. And she's a town resident, but manages a number of properties in the city. And she had expressed interest in serving on the housing commission, and I met with her to gather information about her qualifications. And so she's interested, but I haven't formally recommended her yet.
Well, this was a different person who's actually a tenant, not a property manager. So hopefully there's some names in the works of
Yeah, and I
being appointed.
and I could have, her send, her resume over and then the commission can digest. But I think it'd be good to have that vacancy filled. Just to have more, cooks in the kitchen.
No, we're all, so far, I think, all have been homeowners, so I think if we're going to get somebody on it would be good to get a city resident who's a tenant.
I agree.
Yeah, so, I,
And by the way, are we on tape? We're on tape. Yeah, well, anyway, I would oppose Jenny Kane on the board.
I think that's kind of like, you know, we bring up names and get people's opinion. I did hear, I did have a person suggested to me another one. I think her name is Susan, but I don't know her last name. And we were put in contact, but I never heard from her, so maybe I can follow up. But she is a tenant and very active in the community. Is that the person?
Might be, I wasn't given a name, I was just given her background.
Yeah, so I was given, I was given her email and we were put in touch and I never heard from her. So maybe I'll reach out and see if we could arrange a meeting. And when I do arrange a meeting, probably be good to have one other member there. So I'll reach out to the housing commission, see if anyone would want to be with her. Probably be on it'd probably be on a weekend or after work sometime. That's just considering that I'm in Albany half time and stuff to make it down here. But yeah, is there any other new business?
I have a question about your appointee. Isn't the mayor appoints the people for the commission, right?
Yeah, the mayor appoints, but if there is a person that we recommended, the mayor could either appoint them or not. And that's kind of happened with the planning commission. We had met with an interested individual, and after considering that the mayor appointed another individual to fill the vacancy. So, but it would show that the commission is thinking about the vacancy and, providing their opinion, and the ultimate decision is up to the mayor.
Yeah, the mayor puts it forward and the council has to vote on it.
Right.
That's where we get a meeting.
But I think it's good. I've already put it in my to-do list for tomorrow. Send the emails, get the meeting scheduled, don't forget. All right, so hearing no additional business, I think everybody has their action steps. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second. Motion by Commissioner Friedman. Is any further discussion? Hearing none,